our available resources to focus on audit requests, those areas that we consider to be high risk, and we try to prioritize audits that are long overdue for the chapters. The next question here was, how does Auditor General determine when an audit should be done? We prepare an annual work plan that's presented to your committee during our budget process. And so that pretty much outlines all the projects that we have in mind to do for the fiscal year. And that's what I included as part of this report. It's attachment 1. It's a 3-page document. And you'll see that the program audits are on the first page. The second page lists all of the chapter audits. And I think this is probably the main concern for the committee members. It's broken down into 3 categories. The first part is the full audits that we plan to do for the year. The second part is the CAP follow-up reviews that are scheduled. And of course, the last part is those chapters that are currently in sanction status and that we need to conduct revisits on. The biggest section that we have here is the corrective action plan follow-up reviews. A lot of these CAP reviews that we had were delayed just because of the whole, government closure due to the COVID pandemic, and then of course the priorities of the chapters when they're addressing some of these other important areas. And so when they finally have time, they'll get around to addressing these audit issues. So that list is kind of long. There are still some CAPs that we still need to address. We've reviewed them. We gave them back to the chapters. They're making some more edits, some more changes, and then those will be returned to me. And once I deem them effective, then they can go through the approval process. So, but that's the list that we're currently working with. So that's the audit plan there. Going on to the second page of my report, the other areas that we also take into consideration when we put this audit plan together on an annual basis is the audit request. And that's attachment 2 that I included as part of our report. And this list is just all of the audit requests that we receive from all of the chapters. And this is as of January 2022. And that's the list that we have there. And what I also included in here is to show all of the audit requests that were made for certified chapters. Those are the ones that are in green. And then to the far right of that, we indicated when we completed a last audit for these chapters. And if you go, when you have an opportunity to review this list, I think you'll find that we are meeting these requests to the best of our ability. And so some of the ones that we have may not gotten around to is the certified chapters. And I'll discuss that further. But this is the audit request list for the chapters that we have to date. So this information is also taken into consideration when we put our annual work plan together. The next part is we look at the last time a chapter may have been audited, and that's attachment number 3 that I've also included. And this was updated as of January. And so this is the information based on what we have within our office and what we're tracking. So at the very top, numbers 1 through 6, you'll see that there's a number of chapters that have not been audited in over 20 plus years. And so, but as I will indicate in here that number 5 and 6, those are included on these are all on our work plan, but we are getting around to some of these chapters to actually audit them. And so this list is also something that we take in consideration when we prepare our annual work plan. Attachment number 4 is also another document that we review every time we put our work plan together, and when I'm in the process of assigning audits, is determining the availability of staff at the chapter. And so this is a list that we put together, and this information is coming from the Division of Community Development website. They have a information on there about chapter directory, and so that's the information that we rely on. Of course, it's based on the assumption that they update their information on a periodic basis, but that's what we're using. So you'll find that those chapters that have not been audited in over 20 plus years, this list will show that they don't have full staff. So right now, the top 4 that have not been audited in over 20-something years, they do not have a chapter manager or a coordinator. And so our office, it's always been our general practice not to do any audits if there's no full staff. It makes it hard when we're working with on these audits because we work closely with the administration. The manager, the coordinator, is the main person that oversees the administration of the chapter, so they play a key role. And a lot of times when we do audits, we have to work with that individual closely. So we try not to do audits when there's no full staff. And that's been really the biggest challenge in getting to some of these chapters that have not been audited all these years, is because they don't have staff. And so we try to work with AUC on this information and keeping us updated in terms of the status of the staffing at the chapter. So this list is also something that I take into consideration when we're preparing our work plan and when we're scheduling audits. The other document that I also take into consideration is attachment number 5. This is a list, a tracking that we have developed within our office of the 45 certified chapters. According to the FMS policies, they're supposed to have independent audits done. This is our tracking here. And as you'll see, all the ones that have red X's, we don't have a record at this time on whether those audits are being completed by these certified chapters. Other chapters, they've been pretty good about staying current. You know, like for example, if you're reviewing this attachment 5 at this time, you'll see, like for example, Cornfield's chapter, they are pretty much up to date as of 2020 with all of their independent audits. And I believe Chinle chapter is also doing fairly well with all of their independent audits. So this is the information that I also review. When we get these audits reports in our office, I will look at the type of opinions that are issued for these audit reports. If there's clean audits, then I'm not too concerned. If there's what we call qualified opinions or disclaimer, then that catches my attention, and I have to review these reports further to see what kind of internal control deficiencies that are being cited, non-compliance issues that might be cited. And so for one example here, I don't mean to pick on this chapter, but Greasewood Springs here, they submitted all of their audit reports to us for 2013 through 2016. I took a look at those, and all of those audit reports were issued disclaimer, which means that the independent auditors were unable to issue an opinion on their financial statements because of the number of material deficiencies that were cited. And so as the internal audit department, I'm concerned as to why this is occurring. And most of these are repeat findings year after year. So that's the reason why we went ahead and scheduled Greasewood Springs. We put them on our work plan, and we are actually going to outsource that audit right now so that we can go in there and help the chapter figure out what's going on with regards to internal controls and non-compliance issues. And hopefully when they have the next independent audit done, it'll come back in a better audit, or at least a clean audit. So this is the other document that I also look at when I'm preparing our work plan. So, and then of course, we also get referrals from ASC, and then sometimes there's the controller's hotline, the fraud hotline, the internal auditor over at the controller's office. She will send that information to us for our consideration as well. So hopefully this information answers that second question in terms of, you know, how do we determine when an audit should be done. In terms of the audit schedule, again, that's the work plan that I talked about there. It basically reflects my professional estimate on how to best use our resources in performing assurance services for the Navajo Nation. We present it, again, as I said, as part of our annual budget process. So we determine the available hours per auditor for each year, and then that total hours is compiled to determine the total available hours for audits for the year. And then those total hours are then broken down by the different types of audits we perform. Those can be chapter audits, audits of departments and programs, the follow-up reviews, any investigations, and of course, consulting services. For your information, the current chapter audits that we are in progress of conducting is Klagetoh chapter, Setuck-On chapter, which is a certified chapter. We're also working with Mariano Lake chapter, which is a sanctioned revisit. We're also doing a special review of the chapter debit and credit card usage. That was a concern that was brought to our attention. So we're looking at that as well. The chapter audits that will be outsourced is Greasewood Springs chapter, Gariaha chapter, and Rock Point chapter. Program audits, we are currently auditing the Navajo Nation Veterans Administration. We are doing an audit of the Navajo Rehabilitation Trust Fund, and we also doing a special review of the CARES Act Special Duty Hazard Pay. Other audits that we plan to outsource hopefully this quarter is going to be the Office of the Controller Performance Audit, and then of course the one regarding the legislative concern, which is an audit of this Office of the Speaker and their expenditures. So that's our work plan. Going on to item D is just speaking a lot about outsourcing of audits. Because of our limited resources internally, we do outsource program and chapter audits. And so with the help of these external firms, we're able to complete as much audits as we can on an annual basis. That table on page 3 is just to give you an idea of some of the projects that we have outsourced and what it's costing our office. And so I only summarized the audits for FY 2021 and FY 2020. So we've done chapter audits. We've also done some CAP follow-up reviews, and we've also done some performance audits of departments and programs. You'll see the Veterans Administration performance audit. That's still ongoing. We hope to have that done by the end of this second quarter, but that is going to cost us over $70,000. But keep in mind that audit is for covering a 5-year period. So I'm looking forward to seeing the results of that audit. Going down that list, some other performance audits that we did, the Department of Department of Fish and Wildlife and the Navajo Head Start program. We did some audits that cost us almost $70,000 to do those performance audits. So the cost does vary on the types of audits, but that's just to give you an idea of some of the projects that we're outsourcing in addition to what we're doing internally as well. A little bit about our staffing. We have 15 budgeted positions, 13 auditors, 2 administrative staff. As of today, we do have 5 vacancies. We have the Auditor General, an auditor, and 3 associate auditor positions. We had 2 associate auditors leave during our first quarter of this fiscal year after they spent almost about 1.5 years with us, and they left to pursue other opportunities. And another reason is because they just did not find themselves to be a fit for internal auditing. They were interested in doing other aspects such as daily accounting functions and responsibilities. So they ended up transferring to other departments. We do invest a lot of hours and dollars in training new auditors, especially entry-level positions, but auditing is not for everyone, which is what we're finding. However, we continue to work with DPM to advertise these positions. We're also going to be doing some recruitment efforts directly with some of the universities in hopes to maybe recruit some new graduates for entry-level positions. With my staff that I have, I really appreciate the current staff I have. They work hard, they're very committed, they're dedicated, they do the best they can, and they are multitasking to complete as many projects as possible. I kind of provide a brief description of that. Our principal auditor, we have 2 senior auditors, I have 2 auditors, and I have 2 associate auditors. So that I appreciate them very much. They work hard based on what they've been able to do for fiscal year 2020 and 2021. That small table shows the number of projects we were able to complete in addition to those that we outsourced. So in 2020, our numbers were somewhat low, and it's just because, again, due to the government closure with the COVID, and the closure was mainly with the executive branch. All our audit clients are usually with the executive branch, so that's where we were impacted by that, but we did better in 2021. The next question here was about the Auditor General, whether it's been filled. No, it has not. The position remains vacant. We have not received any recent applicants. We continue to work with DPM to advertise that position. We have done some advertisement in various publications and newspapers, but the ad cost can be expensive. The position requires a professional certification with required number of years as Chief Audit Executive, which is really the Audit Director, the Audit Department Director. Anytime we get any interest in the position, we share that, refer that information to the Speaker's office for their consideration. but it is challenging to find qualified professionals. This is similar to the situation with the controller's position too. As a principal auditor, I'm a certified fraud examiner, and of course I've been employed with this office for over 27 years, so that's how I am currently delegated as the Auditor General. The other question that was posed is who do we answer to about the misuse of funds? I believe this is a question that was posed by one of the committee members as well. Reporting of such incidents can be done with our office, and of course there's the Ethics and Rules Office, there's the White Collar Crime Unit, and of course there's also the Controller's Fraud Hotline. Anytime we get any types of referrals or information that comes to our office, we will assess the risk or the severity of the issues and make a determination on how we're going to address that, whether we're going to do something internally as an investigation, or if we need to refer that over to our counterparts such as ERO or White Collar Crime Unit. We do look to ASC to provide immediate response to incidents at chapters. We look to the division management to provide immediate response to any incidents involving departments and programs. We will assist ASC and division management as needed in addressing these issues. A lot of times ASC will email me to ask me for my guidance or my opinion on how they should be addressing some of these issues at the chapter. So that's how I work with them closely on that. However, we do recommend more training for Navajo Nation employees and elected officials on topics such as fraud, internal controls, ethics, and these types of training can help deter some of these incidents there. There was a question about the audit backlog. This is really not, I said it's not an easy solution, but we are applying some of the changes or we're considering to make some of these changes that I have listed. One, we are reducing our audit periods to 1 fiscal year for chapter audits. I found that if we limit it to 1 year, we're able to do a turnaround quicker because we are just looking at 1 year of activities there. And again, these internal audits, we're looking at focusing on internal controls, and we're looking at accounting processes to make sure that there's compliance and that there's accountability and so forth. So that's the reason why we limited it to 1 year. We're also applying what we call a risk-based approach to our audits. We're assessing a lot of these issues that we identify at the chapter, and we're focusing on what we consider the high risk or critical areas. And so that means that we may not audit every single issue at the chapter because we just don't have the time and the resources. We're focusing on those that we consider to be high risk and try to get the chapters to address those areas sooner than later. We're also advocating for more consulting funds to continue working with external firms to conduct program and chapter audits. That has been very helpful to our program. We're also considering eliminating our quarterly chapter fund balance reporting. We do this on a quarterly basis, but it takes a lot of resources from our office. I have 2 auditors that work on this, and then our principal auditor supervises this. So it takes a lot of time, especially when chapters are not providing the information that we need. So our plan going forward is that we're going to just generate these reports when they are requested. And so that's one of the changes that we are considering. Also, beginning FY 2022, what we have done is for some of the CAP follow-ups that we had, we decided, or at least me as the Delegated Auditor General, we went ahead and gave these programs and these chapters an additional 6 months to complete the remaining portion of their corrective action plan before we make a formal recommendation on whether that be sanctioned or not. Currently, that includes Smith Lake chapter as well as the Office of the Controller, and we'll be scheduled to go back to do follow-ups or revisits after March 2022. And this was really something that we discussed after what the committee's response was with the 3 chapters that we had recommended sanctions for in the past few months, and then those legislations got tabled. And to me, that was a message that the committee was not supportive of sanctioning chapters, and that we really need to consider other alternatives. And so this is what we decided to do for 2022. We continue to remain in contact with the chapter like Smith Lake chapter to make sure that they're really taking advantage of these additional 6 months so that, hopefully when we come back, we won't have to recommend sanctions. But a lot of this is contingent upon the chapter, how they prioritize this and how serious they take this. So, but we continue to work with them on these initiatives. So that's one of the changes that we're making. If it's successful, then I hope that these changes are ones that we're going to go ahead and incorporate into our plan of operation amendments that we are starting to work on right now with regards to the sanction areas and the corrective action plan process. The other part of my point here that I'm making with the audit backlog, I said there also needs to be an emphasis on LGA certified chapters to have their independent audits completed and require those audit reports to be submitted to our office for review and to permit the Auditor General to approve any corrective action plan that is needed to address deficiencies cited by the independent auditors. Right now, there's no process that requires that. For example, Greasewood Springs chapter, there's a section in the report that says corrective measures, but what the auditors did is they just cited the chapter's response to these findings, and it's not a corrective action plan that we require from our office, which I think would be more helpful. And this is what I explained to Greasewood chapter manager when we notified that we scheduled them for audit, and I told him that we're really here to help you try to get everything back in order so the next time you have an independent audit done, it will be a more favorable audit. And so, but there's no process right now requiring any type of approval or requiring the certified chapters to have corrective action plans in response to their independent audits. If it can be done that way, then at least the Auditor General can have assurance that certified chapters are being audited on a routine basis, and it could minimize the need for internal audit. So that means that the 45 chapters are going to be taken care of with the independent audits, and then maybe our office as the internal audit department can focus on the non-certified chapter. So something to consider, but that's what I wanted to point out there. So that basically is my report, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. I hope this answers your questions. If there's additional questions or comments, you're welcome to reach out to our office, and I'll be happy to discuss these with you further. Again, thank you for the opportunity for us to share this information with the committee, and I'm open to any questions that you may have. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Brown, for your report. Back to you, committee members and the Budget and Finance Committee. Is there a motion to accept the report?
Motion, Delegate Crotty.
Motion by Senate Delegate.
Second by Delegate.
Your second.
Make sure your animals have a place to go inside.
Second by Delegate Brown.
Okay, we do have a motion and a second to accept the report. The floor is open for questions for Ms. Brown.
Chairman Henio, this is Delegate Crotty with a question.
You have the floor.
Thank you, Chairman. I appreciate the report, Acting Auditor General. In reviewing the report and looking at some of the systemic issues, what I would like to hear from the program is how do we address some of these issues? So, for instance, if there's a lot of work put into the quarterly report regarding chapter balances, if that's not a function of Auditor General, then is that a request of ASC, or what entity monitors the chapter budget? I look at the WIN system and it's hit or miss if information is in there. If I could get information then in terms of transparency, and the questions that were asked from our constituents regarding chapter budget, where would we find that? Where can we have a transparent chapter budget so that it's in real time and the information is out there for the people and for leadership when making decisions? The second question is regarding your vacancies. And so the Auditor General's position has been vacant. Other than working with DPM, what are some innovative solutions to either go out and recruit an individual to be the Auditor General? I'm not sure in terms of your capacity as acting, as the qualifications. I'm just not sure in terms of why we haven't been able to fill that question or fill that position. And if we look at counties or states, is there a better model rather than just having an Auditor General who's officially a Navajo Nation employee, or if they have a different professional set, then they're able to negotiate a salary that complements their experience and the work of the position. And with that being said, if you could give me insight in terms of, I'm reviewing the budget and I'm looking at what's the plan to scale up the employees who've been working. And I appreciate your 27 years working in the capacity and for the people. But we all know that our pay scale is obsolete, and there's a push to have at least $13 million to get our salaries to where they need to be. Since you're dependent on Navajo Nation general funds, we're going to have a report right now on unmet need, and I can't recall if position salary adjustments were part of that unmet need, but I do recall there was a request for additional support for additional audits. So help me understand that request, because as the oversight, I want to make sure that we're supporting this office, because my next set of questions are going to be about the functions of the office and the capacity. So you mentioned the fraud line. This last year, or since, well, let's just say combine the last 2 years, have these any type of audit findings, have they been forwarded to the fraud or white collar crime unit? In this administration, I have not seen the same type of tenacity to go after or investigate fraudulent fraudulent activity. And so I'm not sure if that's because the Office of the Controller has an internal auditor and maybe that's doing more prevention work. But I just need to understand and how we could build up that capacity. And then what is your current need understanding that it's February, we have 2.5 more quarters in this fiscal year. If provided additional funding, can you pull in consultants or not consultants, vendors who can help meet the needs of the audit? And then I'm going to stop with this question, but I do have a few more, and I appreciate the report. And as your oversight, I do believe we have to support this program. And as we give a lot of attention to the Office of the Controller, similar attention needs to be given to Auditor General's office, and you're under legislative, so we have no excuses. But looking at then what are recommendations for the policy? At the beginning of this term, there were draft policies being developed, and I think that's why some of the actions on the cap is we're waiting for those policy modifications to be developed to see what is an administrative task or what requires the attention of the committee. Because when we sponsor a legislation that requires a delegate, that requires the chapter being involved. But as you mentioned, the audits are solely focused on the work and the action of the administration, which can be the oversight of a certified president, or if they're non-certified under ASC. And so I am trying to connect the dots in terms of policy, why these issues would come before the committee to make determinations when it appears to be an administrative issue. And so I would need clarification, and so if you could give us an update on where we're at with those policies, so that we could update and make recommendations on how often chapters should be audited, if chapters themselves should be paying for the audit. I know you have helped chapters come together and get a better price when it comes to auditing. Maybe that's the solution. But that's some of the recommendation, if we could create that space to have those conversations. Thank you, Ms. Brown and Chairman Henio.
Thank you for your questions. With that, I'll defer back to Ms. Brown for response. Ms. Helen Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Although thank you to Delegate Crotty for all of your comments and questions with regards to our office and the services that we provide, and of course our staff. I'll do my best to answer your questions that you've posed as of now. In terms of the quarterly report, the unspent quarterly report, this is part of what we call our CMCA service. It was started by the former Auditor General. And what we're doing here was providing information to the Navajo Nation Council in terms of what the balances are, available balances for the 110 chapters at the end of each quarter. Unfortunately, this information is not in real time, which would be preferable, I agree. But right now, there's just no, we're not finding the technology and the system that's needed to be able to create information in real time. What we have to do here is that we have to request for all of the chapters to submit their, what we call their backup data to their financial systems. And some chapters are really good about responding to us right away. Some will drag their feet. They'll take weeks to finally get back with us. So it takes time to put these reports together, but we feel the information is important. And I've tried to, we send it out to the council, to the members of the council, and my hope is that they are reviewing these reports for their information. But my concern is that, for example, the two recent legislations that went before council, one is regarding the chapter official stipend, the shortfall. I've mentioned it to the advisor for RDC when they were addressing this, is that, look at our report here. Some of these chapters are carrying over unspent, funds in these stipend accounts, that should be taken into consideration. But I wasn't asked to speak on that any further with regards to that. There was another legislation with regards to some, I believe, emergency funds. So, I said there's some chapters that have balances in their funds. Take a look at this report and see, take that information into consideration. But we weren't asked to refer to that information. The reports were not mentioned. So, from my end, it was a concern. I said, are these reports really being utilized, the information that we're providing? And so that's the reason why, and of course, we also have to weigh, the hours that we spend on it and say, can we spend those hours elsewhere for another audit per se, instead of doing these quarterly reports. So that's something that we're having to juggle in our office and to see, what we can best do. But we can be responsive to certain audit requests. We did issue a supplemental report when it was requested by Delegate Charles Newton. She wanted us to compare the fund balances prior to COVID and then after COVID. We prepared that report using the same process, and we issued that report to her as well as the rest of the council for your information. So we are responsive if the request is being made. So that's what I meant when we're having to reassess these quarterly reporting. As far as the budget, so the reports that we're preparing, it's the fund balances. It's not the budget information, but you're correct. There is the WIN system that's maintained by Division of Community Development. We refer to it when we need to. When the chapter's not providing us their budget information, we have to refer to the WIN system. And sometimes the numbers are not reconciling. And I understand that for the WIN system to be reliable, the chapters also have to be responsive in providing that information so that it can get uploaded into the system. So again, I believe it falls on the chapter to be responsive and to be readily available with that information. But we do look at that system for that type of information. And if the chapters can be timely and if the information can be provided on time and in full, then I believe that's where the issue with transparency can be met with regards to the budget information. And that's available for anyone to review on their website. So any constituent who wants to know about the budget and then what are some of the fund balances, then that's where they can get on that system for that information. As far as vacancies for the Auditor General's position, yes, we are working with DPM. We have requested for the position to be advertised in some of these professional organizations that we are members with, the Institute of Internal Auditors, the Local Government Association of Government Auditors, the Association of Certified Fraud Examiners. So these are professional associations some of us are members to. We have looked in to see if we can request to have the position advertised. Of course, that comes at a price. I have not considered looking into whether other counties or other cities or municipalities in terms of how they recruit for these types of positions. Is certainly something that we can look into to see if that would help us recruit somebody for this position. Right now, we're just relying on what is advertised with DPM. The pay scale, it could be a contributing factor. When the former Auditor General left and when we had to vacate that position and put it as advertise it as a vacant position, I was told by DPM that we would have to go back to the initial pay grade. And so what I had to do is negotiate with DPM and said, if we go back to the initial pay grade for this Auditor General position, nobody's going to want to apply. So we end up bringing up at least 2 step grades back up from that so that it'd be a little bit more reasonable. So, but any, I think, pay scale, not only for the Auditor General's position, but for the rest of my audit staff. I have not only myself, I have 2 other auditors that are certified fraud examiners, and I have 1 auditor who's a certified government audit professional. These are professional certifications. And I also have 2 auditors that have a master's degree. They obtained their master's degree, but they're working here. They probably could potentially be earning more if they were to move on somewhere. But I'm really doing my best to retain these individuals because they contribute a lot to our office. So it is challenging, and I think the pay scale is part of that. And they deserve higher pay, just like similar employees with similar credentials in other departments and programs. In terms of the audit finding with their referrals, since for the past, I believe, 2 years, I really have not done any referrals to the white collar crime unit just because the positions, the office was really with no staff. They've had acting prosecutors over there, and then there was no investigators over there. I was told, I think in the last 6 months or so, they now have staff over at the white collar crime unit, new people. So I have not had a chance to meet with them yet to see what they plan to do and how they're going to be addressing some of our maybe prior referrals. I have been working closely with the Ethics and Rules Office, but they no longer have a director there as well. They do have a few more investigators, but they don't have a director there. So, those types of things kind of complicates some of, how some of our referrals are going to be addressed. But we are, we do keep them in mind in terms of what they can assist our office with, but they are there to do further investigations as needed. So it's really building that capacity in those other departments as well, and stability as well. And so I think if that can be done, I think we can be more successful in addressing some of these referrals. I know when I was first put as a delegated Auditor General, I became involved with a public integrity task force that was created by the former Attorney General. And so I was asked to participate in that. I wasn't involved from the very beginning, but I got involved when I was first delegated. And they were actually trying to create some initiatives when they had that task force. But when the administration changed over and the new Attorney General, I believe that task force might have just kind of dissolved. I'm not really sure. There was no other meetings thereafter. But I think that kind of task force really kind of acknowledged some of these issues going on within the Navajo Nation, the white collar crime, some of maybe the misuse of funds, unethical conduct, those kinds of things. And so I'm not sure what the Attorney General has in mind going forward. I have not been asked to be part of any discussion since, but I know that was something that was an initiative that was taken previously. So maybe that's something that, maybe we need to, reconsider again at some point and really come up with some more definitive solutions going forward. As far as the controller hotline, the referral comes to us. I understand the internal auditor for that office, she oversees that hotline. Anything that comes into her through that hotline, she will document it and then she'll refer it to the appropriate offices. So, for example, if anything is related to personnel, it will go to personnel. And then anything related to other issues like misuse of funds, that kind of stuff, other improprieties and things like that, then that comes to our office for us to consider. So she does the referral to us, not us to her. So, but we have not gotten anything from her recently. My understanding is that all of the controller staff are fairly busy with addressing the whole hardship and the ARPA funding. So, but we haven't gotten any recent referrals from the controller's office on that. And then in terms of whether we need more money to do more audits, it is always welcome in our office. Any additional money, I try to put it towards consulting. I know this past year, Delegate Slater was able to get allow us to have our carryover funds moved into 2022, which we appreciate. I think that brought an additional $100,000. That money, though, I anticipate using for the performance audit of the controller's office. I've been working with the acting controller to identify some of the key areas that we need to focus on when it comes to performance. And when we talk about performance audit, we're talking about efficiency, effectiveness, and what's the most economical way to use our resources. And so with that in mind, between her and I, we identified a lot of areas within the controller's office. So that performance audit, I anticipate, is going to cost anywhere between $80,000 to $100,000 because the auditor is going to cover a lot of area, especially if we're going to find out, you know, what we can do to improve performance and customer service over there. So, so the carryover money that we were able to get is what I have in mind for the performance audit. And of course, the other one that we were told to work on is the Speaker's Office audit. You know, that one I will be outsourcing because I want to make sure that you know, there's no impartiality and so forth like that. I want to make sure it's, you know, we're being objective and so forth. So I'll be outsourcing that. I'm working on an RFP right now, and so I anticipate that costing maybe anywhere between $60,000 to $75,000, if depending on how much you know, activities we're going to have to review. So those types of projects, the bigger projects, do eat up our consulting budget. But if you notice in my report, the chapters, they're averaging about $30,000 to $35,000. And so for one program audit, what it's costing me there, it could cover 2 chapter audits. And so it's a juggling act on my part. You know, I have to consider, you know, what is the council requesting? What do they want? What's important to them? And then, of course, you know, who has not been audited in so many years and so forth. So that's what we're doing. And so, yes, any additional money would be helpful. It does take time to advertise these audit services. And of course, the whole contracting process, that takes time. I try to get these started. I work on this pretty much myself in the office because the rest of my auditors and handle direct audit services, and I deal a lot of the administrative stuff with my administrative staff. So it does take time, but we try to get it going beforehand. As far as the draft policies and procedures, this is something that we need to continue working on. I know that's a good point that was made by Delegate Crotty about, you know, what part of these audit activities is considered administrative and what really needs to go before this committee, because you are viewed as our audit committee for the Navajo Nation. The BNS committee is the audit committee. And so we want to present our audit reports to you because it's important information. But, you know, we are looking like, say, for example, the corrective action plan approval process. That process alone is lengthy. It takes time. And so one of the things that I was considering, and I look at other audit shops within other like state governments, you know, county governments to see how they do it. And a lot of them basically is, you know, once the audit's completed, they'll work with the client to come up with a corrective action plan. And once the auditor, the chief audit executive officer or the department director, auditor general, they prove it, then right then and there is when the program will start working with their CAP. And so it doesn't require a legislative process, which would, you know, it kind of prolongs it. And the longer the process takes, I feel like the clients tend to forget the audit reports and the audit issues. And then when we come back with the CAP, then it's like reminding everyone of what the audits were. And then it's even more challenging when there's a change in elected officials, or even when there's a turnover in staff. You know, we have to go back to the beginning and educate everyone what was the audit, what was the process. And then sometimes, you know, the chapters will disagree on our audit findings. They don't agree with it. Even programs and departments, they won't agree with some of our audit findings. And so even though it's presented to them, you know, how the audit finding was created. So it presents challenges. So those are kind of, you know, if we can do that, then I think it becomes more an administrative part on my end. But, you know, I'm compelled by our plan of operation. It's my responsibility as the Auditor General to make sure the CAPs are effective. And so I need to make sure they are. But if I can say this is good enough, then can they just start working with it right then and there instead of going through this whole legislative process and getting the committees to approve it. So those are kind of some of the things that we're taking into consideration. I think that's some of the policies that you're talking about. So I'll go ahead and stop there. I hope I was able to answer your questions, Delegate Crotty. Thank you.
Yeah, that's what started off with. You just said, here's the
What came from Ron Ellen, so they gave a report.
Okay, can you mute your phone, please? Somebody can hear you talking about Ron Allen and so forth. So with that, thank you, Ms. Brown, for your response. Back to Budget and Finance Committee. Any further questions for Ms. Helen Brown?
Chairman Henio, this is Delegate Crotty.
Negotiation, you have the floor for a follow-up.
Thank you, Chairman. I appreciate the response, Ms. Brown, and we hope that we can continue to support you and understanding if by code or in your plan of operation we're considered the audit committee. I appreciate that, and but I didn't hear a time frame when those policies will be ready. If we could get a time frame so we could have a work session on the policies to look at what amendments are needed. Also, because that's part of our committee's, I believe it was part of our priority and internally some of the work that we wanted to look at. And then my second question is, if I could get a sense of what is your unmet need? Is there an unmet need for this fiscal year, or is there just a need for additional funding every year? We're having conversations about what is considered fixed cost, what is considered mandatory funding that we need. So I would just need to know what that looks like, Chair, as we move forward and are looking at our federal budgets and now getting ready for fiscal year 23 budget cycle. Thank you.
Shane, enough for that question. So I'll defer back to Ms. Brown as far as what the unmet needs are.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Delegate Crotty, for the questions and comments. As far as the timeline for the policies and procedures, we certainly can continue to work on that. I'm looking at my calendar right now. I can probably commit to maybe by the end of April to have some solid policies and procedures that we can have ready to present to the committee. I don't know if these would be considered administrative policies or actual proposed amendments to our plan of operation, but we certainly can put the two together so that we can at least share with the committee what we have in mind going forward, and then of course continue to work with your program based on your feedback and input to determine what would be the best course of action going forward, particularly in the areas of addressing sanctions for chapters and programs. If that's something that we're going to no longer do, then how do we address holding departments and chapters responsible for addressing audit issues? And so that's the timeline that I can commit to at this time, maybe by the end of April. As far as unmet needs, I do not have a solid number at this time, but if that's what the committee is asking for, I can certainly work on that. I can look at what we have done to date in terms of audits based on our work plan that I shared with the committee and what we anticipate we would like to complete by the end of the fiscal year. And I can certainly provide that to the committee. I can do that by maybe a memo to the committee to share that with you to see what if the unmet needs that we have for the program. Really, it is with regards to conducting as many audits as we can. Like I said, we do have vacant positions. I know it's important to have the Auditor General position filled, but I feel like I've been filling that capacity. I have not been limited in terms of what I'm doing. I pretty much just took on everything that the Auditor General does, even though I'm just delegated. There's a difference between delegated and acting. I was delegated because I did not initially meet the qualifications of the Auditor General position, which required a professional certification at the time. And so that's the reason why I was delegated. I did obtain my certification as a certified fraud examiner shortly after I became delegated, and I have been a CFE since then, but I have not been changed to acting status. When you become acting status, then you basically meet the requirements for the Auditor General position. So that's the difference between the delegation and the acting. But I've been able to basically perform all of the duties and responsibilities. I attend the investment committee meetings. I pretty much run this office. So what's important to me is filling the auditor and the associate auditor positions, because they're the ones that, you know, if I have more auditors, staff auditors, then we're able to do more audits. And so that's where my recruitment, I guess, per se, is really going to be my priority right now, is to try and get those positions filled, because they're the ones that do the actual audits. They're the ones that go out there and get the audits completed. So that's important to me. You know, as far as the unmet needs, I think right now is just really whether you know, we have the money to pay external firms so that they can continue to help us complete as many audits as we can, because I don't have full staff here. So but I can work on putting some numbers together if that's what the committee wishes for our office to do. We can certainly do that and put that in writing and get it to the committee as soon as possible. So that will be my response to Delegate Crotty's questions and comments, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Brown, for that response. Back to the Budget and Finance Committee. Any further questions, comments for Ms. Helen Brown?
Chairman Henio, this is Delegate Crotty with the follow-up.
Negotiation and you have the floor.
I appreciate that, and thank you, Ms. Brown, for the clarification, and congratulations on successfully getting your professional credentials. So I would need to know from the Office of the Speaker, my request, I don't know if I need to make it a directive, what is the timeline for the Office of the Speaker to take action in, I don't want to get into personal matters, but if we have a qualified individual, I also believe that individuals should be compensated for their time and their education and their energy. So if there's speaker staff on the line, I would want to know then what is the plan to either for the acting status, or what is the plan to get a permanent individual? And I would request, if needed, on record from Ms. Brown in terms of what is the unmet need from her office, as we're going to receive a report on what are the unmet needs of the nation. And if we want transparency and accountability, it requires a strong auditor's office. And I do want to identify that there are states like Massachusetts, the state of Alabama, and Maine. They have policies and have technology. It's called Open Checkbook. And it's a searchable database on unaudited expenditures by the state. And it also breaks down vendors. And so I would want to have a future conversation about how we can scale up Navajo Nation to help with transparency, especially when it comes to expenditures at all different levels. And so that would be my recommendation. Thank you, Chair and committee members.
Commissioner for your recommendation. And so with this on the directive, what we could do is issue that directive to the Office of the Speaker after we accept the reports, all the reports, and I'll recognize you again, Shananda, to offer that directive, and we can move forward with that. As far as maybe at the same time, Ms. Tapahi, are you listening in on the conversation? Ms. Lorraine Tapahi. Okay, with that, we'll reach out to Mr. Tapahi regarding drafting language for that directive. With that, any further questions, comments, committee members? If there are no further questions, comments, committee members, I'll ask call for the question to accept the report.
All right, sir. Honorable Elmer Begay.
I vote green.
Elmer Begay votes green. Honorable Nathaniel Brown.
Delegate Brown votes in favor.
Honorable Nathaniel Brown votes in favor. Honorable Amber Knezba-Crowdy.
Yes, this is Delegate Crowdy. I'll vote green. Thank you.
Honorable Amber Knezba-Crowdy votes green. Honorable Raymond Smith Jr.
Green.
Honorable Raymond Smith Jr. votes green. Honorable Jimmy Yellowhair. Honorable Jimmy Yellowhair. Carry a vote of 4 in favor, 0 opposed.
Hello. Delegate Yellowhair votes green. Chair, are you still on the board? My brother, Mr. Henio. This is Delegate Yellowhair.
We are voting to accept the Auditor General's report.
Not
Sir,
that
We're already voting. We've completed our votes. Mr. Bose?
He said green, so I will take it as in favor of the report.
So what's the count?
5-0, sir. 5-0.
With that, we do have a vote in 5 in favor, 0 opposed, chair not voting, and yeah, Ms. Brown for your report and spending time out of your busy schedule with the committee here. With this, let's move forward to the next item on the agenda.
Chairman, it's Delegate Yellowhair.
We need to move forward. We need to move forward to the next report. Office of the Controller, Ms. Elizabeth Begay, are you on the line?
You're good.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I'm here with Gerald Shirley, our accounting manager that is overseeing the Hardship Assistance Program. We're here to do a verbal report.
Katrina, you have the floor, Ms. Begay and Mr. Shirley.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, Budget and Finance Committee. Good afternoon. We're here to provide the update on the elderly cares hardship assistance, as well as the ARPA hardship. For the elderly, I'll do a quick report on that. We were able to print 45,000 checks, and that's been sent in the mail. And there's approximately 2,000 left that we need to work on because of issues with their address. They applied using their physical address. So now we will have to call each one of them to get their mailing address. So that's the leftover. After that, then all the 48,000 elderlies will be assisted, and those that we printed the checks over the weekend, they should expect the checks in the mail by this week. And for the ARPA update, I'll transfer the floor to Mr. Shirley. He will give you the update on that. Go ahead, Gerald.
Right. Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for allowing me the time to speak here. I'm going to go ahead and give a high level overview of the ARPA and where we're at right now. So, as many of you had indicated last week, in terms of the resources that the OOC has to, I guess, facilitate the process of the check printing, we went ahead and reached out to Wells Fargo, and as we speak, I'm writing an email to Wells Fargo to see what they can do to help us facilitate the process of printing 350,000 checks. So once we send out an email, they'll get back with us. At the same time, though, we're still keeping in our back pocket the optionality of printing the checks here, if that's what it comes down to. But to help you understand the magnitude of what we're dealing with, we had check printing. I mean, cashiers are basically printing the checks all day on Saturday, and most of the day yesterday, and then half the day on Friday to get the 45,000 checks out. Another thing that was noted last week too is we do have a printer en route as well, and hopefully we should get that this week. So now, what I'm going to now going back to the ARPA hardship is we're still printing out a lot of the 22. It's now at 22,000 emails of basically applications and then change of address forms. Right now, the team that we have, they're currently going through printing that, sorting it, and basically figuring out what information is lacking. At this point, we have a large number of recipients who've turned in applications with no appropriate documentation. So that's going to be another challenge for us to kind of like, I guess, find a resolution for reaching out to those applicants, getting the required documents. Change of address forms, we have some issues there. And I apologize right now for getting technical, but this is what we're dealing with right now. So in the change of address forms, we have basically people, for example, we have some parents who are processing a change of address forms for the fully grown adults. And we know this because when we do verification, we're checking these kids out, or these individuals, and we notice that they're full-grown adults and they've received their hardship checks previously at a different address. So we're dealing with some things like that. And I guess one of the things, if anything, what I want to get across to the group as a whole is that the verification process is where we're going to find the longest delays. But we're looking at options right now to alleviate a lot of that. Right now, we've had people come and volunteer to help us, and we really appreciate that. But right now, what's important for us is to get to the point where we have the data organized and we know what's going to be confronting us. Once we get that done, we more than welcome staff to come and help us with that information. We also have some other technical challenges in terms of changing the information, because right now we're dealing with Excel spreadsheets. And I'm not sure how familiar you guys are with spreadsheets, but depending on where the spreadsheets are located, and not everyone can access the spreadsheet at the same time and update address changes or input new applications. So that's just a technical challenge that we can get around that as well. So that's at a high level, that's where we are at right now. If I'd be willing to field any questions related to anything that I've spoken about so far right now. Thank you.
So, Mr. Chair, so based on that, overcoming all these technical issues that Mr. Shirley mentioned, since we have the information on the elderlies, the plan is to process the ARPA hardship first, priority the elderlies, and then next will be the hardship to recipients, because we have the information on those recipients that do not have all the issues with the hardship 1 recipients. So that's the next priority. Thereafter, we will be tackling the hardship 1 recipients, and of course, the new applicants for the ARPA hardship. That
well,
okay.
yeah. Let me. The Madam Controller just reminded me of an issue too. One of the things that we're looking at is, because we understand the need to get these checks out as soon as possible. We understand that, the hardship team understands that. So one of the things we're also looking at, and this is one of the reasons why I'm really pushing to allow the hardship team to go through its data and sort it into its appropriate piles, because then we can identify how many of the people are impacted, in terms of address changes, and so that we can weed those people out and then put them ahead of the queue line in terms of processing checks. So those are some of the things we're dealing with, like Madam Controller explained earlier. That we know that the hardship checks that we had just processed for the elderly, more than likely those are some of the people who can probably, we can get the ARPA checks processed right away because we know we just paid them out. There shouldn't be any address changes in that regard.
So that concludes our report, Mr. Chair.
Well, Kashina, thank you for that report, even though I think we see you were going in and out in certain places when you were talking through your report, but I was able to pick up your points on the report. With this, committee members, is there a motion to accept the report?
Delegate Brown will motion.
Okay, motion by Shananta. Delegate Nathaniel Brown, is there a second?
Delegate Yellow here. Delegate Yellow here.
Is there a second? Second by Shananta. Delegate Jimmy Yellow here. So we do have a motion and second. With this, committee members, floor is open for questions.
This is Delegate Brown.
Shananta, you have the floor.
Yeah, Budget and Finance Committee, Ado Shema, Ms. Nakai, for all your help and knowledge. And then thank you for this report. I am getting messages here as our people are listening. First of all, thank you to Controller's Office and all your staff involved. I know that there's this sense of urgency. However, sending out these checks, there's other people asking why are we rushing so much? In order to do a job right, we do have to take time, minding that we are dealing with federal dollars and the lack of staff and possibly I can understand the logistical area. I've asked this to Gerald before, but our people that are listening, for their information, if you can explain to us direct deposit, I would imagine, what would be the process for that? And is the Controller's Office, the Accounts Payable Office now what kind of capability do you have with the current staff and technology? I'm not sure if that would be saving money as far as, the stamps and everything that the nation has to pay for. I could imagine how much that would cost and printing all the checks. What's the difference, if you can explain to us, printing checks and then maybe a ballpark estimate figure on how much that's costing postage wise, or if we're in fact paying postage, and the manpower that I saw a Facebook post last Friday, I think it was, our Saturday, our people, folding checks and then putting them into envelopes and taking them to the post office. But what would a direct deposit to checking accounts for? Maybe would that be an option later on? What would that look like? So that's my one question. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for that question. Yeah.
Please, Mr. Sterling, hold on, please. Hold on. Wait till you're recognized. Budget and Finance Committee, any further questions, comments? Are there any further questions, comments, Budget and Finance Committee?
Chairman, this is Delegate Yellow here.
Hearing none, so I'll refer back to Delegate Jimmy Yellow here. Go ahead, you have the floor. Delegate Yellow here.
Okay, I'm sorry. Meters is on the phone. Anyway, Acting Controller Elizabeth Decay, Internal Controller, Dr. Gerald, thank you for helping Elizabeth Gay. No, this gets just very straight. When is ARPA funds, American Rescue Plan Act funds, these checks will be mailed, when will be effective? When is a Hakula, it's a piece of the cheat RG. Gerald, I know you guys are really busy and trying to put everything in order. It even not just get us to the chairman.
Kushina Kela. Thank you, Dr. Delgado here. I'll defer back to Ms. Elizabeth Gay and Mr. Shirley.
Right, thank you for the question. I'm sorry, I didn't get Yellow Hair's question if he had one. Okay. I'll answer Daniel Brown's question. In regards to the direct deposit, yes, it's possible to do a direct deposit, right? But right now, if you were to, but just to think about the enormity of the task when it comes to the logistics, our direct deposit that we have within OOC is primarily for vendor payments. And so basically, basically we have vendors who fill out a form, that's available online on our Facebook, on our website, and they would submit that information to us and we would set them up in the system for direct deposits. So that's how we have it set up. It's not set up to handle the large amount of checks that would need to be processed. However, as I mentioned in my previous statement, we did reach out to Wells Fargo about helping us with the check printing. And so I think one of the things that they could possibly talk to us about is maybe finding an easier way to do direct deposit, because there's a system that they have that other vendors are using that we could possibly use. Until we get more information from Wells Fargo, that's where it's at in terms of direct deposits. But yeah, I mean, that would mean for direct deposits, that would mean more man hours basically. And just because of the control issues that we have, not control issues on our part, but it's just a control measure that's part of the feature within the finance department. Only certain people are allowed to do that type of entries into FMIS. So like I said, at a high level, yes, it can be done, but it would be a very large task if we had to do that, especially when you think about, my God, the thousands and thousands of direct deposit recipients that we'd have to do.
Yeah. And as far as Delegate Yellow Hair question, when ARPA fund will be dispersed, I'll have Gerald answer that as well.
Okay, in terms of the timeliness of this, and I think it goes in hand with what Honorable Nathaniel Brown was also indicating, is that we're basically, we're not rushing into this in terms of processing checks. So we understand the need for that, but we need to be careful. So one of the things that we're trying to get set up here is essentially, get all the paperwork situated and take a look at what we have. The sooner we can get that taken care of, then I can give you better timelines in terms of when ARPA checks will be processed. But I would hesitate to pinpoint, OOC and give it a timeline that we can't, meet. So I think, yeah, but again, going back to what I had alluded to earlier, there are some things that we can go to, for example, the 43,000, 45,000 checks that we process for the elderly. Those are some of the people that we can possibly just start processing within the next month or less than 30 days. But then again, don't hold me to that. It's just, again, that's something that we can do at a high level.
Ken, thank you, Mr. Shirley, for that response. Another part of the question from Delegate Brown was the cost associated with printing checks and also postage and so forth. Do you have a response to that question, part of the question?
Yes, I don't have the answer right away. I know I can get the answer for you and then submit the response this afternoon. I would have to talk to cashiers because, cashiers are the ones who are primarily responsible for the check printing. All AP does basically is, gather all the information, do its verification, and then because of control issues again, that the check printing process is given to the cashiers, but I can get that information for you.
Okay, here, thank you for that response. And so with that, maybe once you do get the information, email it to Peggy, and then she'll disperse the information to the committee via email. So with that, back to the Budget and Finance Committee. Any further questions, comments?
Hey, I also has a brief question.
Okay, we do have Delegate Odoso on the call, and I did also get a text from Madam Chair Charles Newton, also being on the call here today. So are there any further questions, comments from the Budget and Finance Committee? Then I'll defer to Che. Delegate Vice Chair Odoso.
Yeah, time and the report from the controller and staff. First of all, thank you for doing the tremendous amount of work that you guys are doing there. We know that getting out these checks out to our elders are you guys are pushing it, and they did. Oh yeah, but I had two elders who approached me who indicated that they were 59 before this year, and they turned 60, and just want to make sure that since this is on the web and being broadcast, that just so that elders out there understand that process there, that you guys are actually making that change there and providing that information. The other is as Honorable Yellow Hair alluded to, is when you're going to issue out the checks on the main ARPA funds. We as delegates, we're getting calls and texts just like any other delegate there. When are we getting our money? It was beginning to sound like J.P. Morgan commercial. I want my money and I want it now. And but since you alluded to some time issues that you don't want to really get out to the open, the most important thing is that the communication to the general public. What is your office doing to try to disseminate that information so that it's out there? Because each of us delegates were getting this information, and all I'd say is the council has approved and appropriated those dollars to be issued as checks, and the president signed it, and now it's in the president's hand, and that's the program that you guys are under. So therefore, it's in your ballpark, and they just need some information on timelines. And I know you indicated that you don't want to give some timelines, but they are asking. And maybe if there's a phone number that we could, that you could email to the delegates, so that we could give those phone numbers to our constituents, so that they can call there and try to get some answers from that office there. Thank you very much.
Chairman, this is Delegate Yell here.
Kashina, for the questions, and with that, I have to get off the Zoom call here because I'm here at Chambers, and the internet is cutting out on me. So, Delegate Jimmy Yell here.
Okay, thank you very much, Chairman Yeah. Honorable Auditor, thank you very much for follow-up. That was my follow-up. Thank you very much. Over here in 80. Yeah, there's a lot of people ask for that one. Since they're above 18 in that high, it is a lot in that kid. When our checks will be mailed after, no. But not this kid. Yeah, to the auto. Thank you. Okay, there. Look on my follow-up. Thank you very much, Gerald, and also Elizabeth Gay acting. We need to do a lot of work, and thank you very much helping all the Navajo Nation. We're the biggest nations in all enough other tribes. Yeah, thank you, Chairman.
That, Vice Chair Smith. Vice Chair Smith, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chairman, and Budget and Finance Committee members, and those listening on, and Acting Controller Ms. Begay and Mr. Shirley for giving us a report on this. I've been getting some questions too on behalf of the ARPA funds, and they were saying that the first CARES money, now that we're done with the CARES money, but it was just an example they were giving me. They said that the first checks that were cut out, excuse me, in the legislation it said $1,500, but they didn't get the $1,500. They got the $1,450. Now, is that going to be the same way with this one? We're saying $2,000. And when I drive by the council or when I drive by the president's office, I always see a line at the census office. So that means there's more people applying. There's more people wanting to make sure that their census number is valid, or they're enrolling, or they're enrolling their family members. And we did appropriate $557 million. I'm just wondering if that's going to be enough to cover for everybody that's going to be expecting $2,000, because some of the teenagers turn from 17 to 18, and more kids are being put in the system too for their census number. Is there a projection? Because last time that it was based off the projection. And are we going to just pay out $2,000 and then at the end pay out whoever's coming forth, and there's not enough to pay out $2,000 or $600? They'll get less than what has been in the legislation. That's my question, Chair Henio. Thank you.
Okay, with that, thank you, Vice Chair Smith. With that, defer back to Ms. Elizabeth Begay and Mr. Shirley.
Okay.
The 61.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Budget and Finance Committee, question by Chair Otto. So regarding the age for the elderly to qualify for that $342 that we just mailed, they have to be 60 and over on or before 12/31/21 to qualify for that elderly hardship. And of course, for the ARPA, in order to qualify for the adult 2,000 hardship assistance, the recipients has to be 18 on or before January 4th, 2022. So those are the cutoff dates to be eligible for the elderly, as well as to be deemed adult for the ARPA hardship. And for the question regarding Vice Chair Smith on the amount, Gerald will be responding to that. Go ahead, Gerald.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you for the question, Honorable Smith. We're the ones who are I mean, I can't really speak to what happened with the CARES in that regard, but I know that for the ARPA since we are the ones controlling the payment process, and I mean, I am literally the one who's parsing out these files and giving it to AP to process. So we can ensure that the 2,000 will be paid out. And whether Wells Fargo also assists with us, we can also insist that the 2,000 be paid out in that regard as well. And I think one of the things I want to highlight, and I think you alluded to this, Honorable Smith, is the fact that, there are so many moving parts. I mean, the situation is very much fluid in terms of like, the age differences, right? People are turning 18, so they're no longer having to use their parents to get to receive money there. So those are some of the things that we are dealing with right now. And this is one of the reasons why I keep, kind of restating the fact that we our hardship team needs some time to get all the information and data situated. And, the sooner we can get the data situated, I can give you some more clear answers, especially in regard to your question about, is the $557 million that was allocated enough? I think once we get a better handle on the data, we can basically give you some of those answers, or estimates at least, of what we're looking at. And in regards to auto SOs, question on timeline of payment, again, I'm going back to I hesitate to give a timeline right now, a hard timeline, and then we don't meet that timeline, and then you guys are going to even get more flack from your constituents, and thereby we're going to get some some hard questions as well. But also, one of the things, aside from dissemination of the timeline for payment, what our team is also preparing to do is we're basically going to get some information, and it's a PowerPoint presentation. It's going to show basically what are the documents that are required for applications and also for change of address. And we're going to have a list of frequently asked questions, because the hardship team right now have already come up with a preliminary frequently asked question sheet. And so we're just basically fine tuning that. We're hoping to get that out by the end of this week and disseminate it through social media, and then also give it to the speakers so he can pass it out as well to the council members. So those are some things for our goal for this week right now.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that response. Back to Budget and Finance Committee. Any further questions, comments?
Shannon, this is Delegate Brown.
Daniel Brown, you have the floor.
Oh, yeah. I'm going to go back to all the, if you can, Controller's Office, if you can work on a lot of the questions that we're receiving from our people is the age. I know we do have a lot of, we're really blessed as the Nene. We have a lot of new Navajo babies being born. So what's the birth date for them to be registered to receive some funding? You did, I know, Madam Controller, you did respond to the age of 18 would be, they would have to be born before January 4th, to turn 18 before January 4th of 2022. So that would be for the same question for the newborn. And the other part is, Madam Controller, I know you did mention to me before, there was this other part that our Navajo people cashing checks twice. The first way would be for them to use their mobile banking, mobile deposit from their cell phones or computer, and then immediately going to the bank and cashing the check. And that, I know that you said that that's what the Controller's Office was dealing with also, and slowing down the process. And I think with a direct deposit, that would also eliminate some of those very serious concerns. The last thing we need is to have a huge audit finding on this. So I understand the paper trail, but I understand that we currently, especially Navajo Nation employees, and a lot, that's how a lot of people are receiving their checks, or their biweekly checks as well. I also understand that elderly, they no longer receive checks that their Social Security are deposited. And I think I would just encourage on how we can help your office to make this happen, to expedite some of these process. And I think that will create a limited amount of physical contact. Having what we've heard last week was our people are waiting at the chapter, going in and out and exposing themselves. I think this would be just another way. I do support and understand that logistically this might be a nightmare for the controller's office, but these are some of the thoughts that our wonderful people are bringing to my attention. Again, if you could just respond to the newborn birthday again, explain to us the 8 our youth that are turning 18 years old, the cutoff date for those, and I think yeah, that'll be all. Yeah, thank you.
Delegate Nathaniel Brown. With that, defer back to Madam Controller, Ms. Begay, and Mr. Shirley.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Delegate Brown, for the question. For the minors that receive their hardship assistance from the CARES, they have to turn 18 on or before January 4th, 2022 to be considered adults for the ARPA hardship. And for the newborns, the application period for the ARPA hardship ends December 31st, 2022, as long as they can produce CIB, then they will qualify for the ARPA hardship. I understand the state office is behind in issuing birth certificates. And of course, they need that to apply for the CIB. So that's the hindrance that the new parents will have to resolve, how to get the birth certificate for their newborn so that they can get the CIB, and then they can submit it to our office before December 31st, 2022. That's the application period that will end on the ARPA hardship. And of course, with regards to the issue about some recipients of hardship in the past, the CARES were able to cash their check twice. We flagged them, and we know who cashed their checks twice. Therefore, they will not be eligible for the ARPA hardship assistance. Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you for that response. Back to the committee, Budget and Finance Committee. Any further questions, comments?
Chairman Tanya, this is Delegate Claudia.
Delegate Amber Canals-Waxati, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chairman, Acting Controller, and staff. I understand at this point in February that the Office of the Controller and the section is asking the public and leadership to have patience and understanding and reading the press releases, the impact of COVID on your office, exposure, and limited staff. With that in mind, a frustration I have is when Navajo Nation received these federal dollars back in March, and official action was taken by Navajo Nation Council in July, that established the opportunity for the Office of the Controller to access funding for administrative costs. So you receive $17 million. And so I'm having a hard time understanding why in February which is so July, August, September, October, November, December, January. 6 months ago, the office helped me understand like the planning and getting ready for the hardship, and then looking at the legislation that was vetted by the president's office. There was hardship in that legislation, although the price change or the assistance change, the procedure would have been the same. So I'm trying to understand where is the systemic flaw in terms of planning for this allocation of dollars. And so I feel the frustration of community members, and we're at this point where yes, we have to be patient, and yes, there's these challenges, but I'm thinking in the front end, what was the planning and design of executive to implement this as acting controller? It's my understanding that you report directly to the president, and so what failed? What part of our system failed? Where we're at this point in February, having conversations about Excel files and other things that these conversations, in my opinion, should have happened back in July, or when information was received from Baker Tilly. So I'm just trying to understand that so that we can prevent and improve our system. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, thank you for that question.
You are unmuted.
I believe Delegate Allen through the gate. Were you going to speak to?
Again, to let Chair Henio, other members of the Budget and Finance Committee, other people that are on the line. I think there was a question brought up by one of the delegates during the winter session regarding that there was a recommendation that was made to controller. I know that previously the controller, Controller Kirk, there was a lot of another discrepancy regarding the application. People had the way the application went through is there was one of the applicant on there or recipients had problems with the census, so they hold up the whole application. But during that time, that even though like that, they processed all the others that are correct, there was no problem with the application, so they processed it. They checked promptly, and then they waited on the others that they screened it, and then they replied that, or people were. I know a lot of times, that I myself, that I had to call Baker Tilly, and even some of them were like a phone number that I called was out in Dallas, Texas, out in the area, and they responded back real quickly with the email. Right now, I don't know how it's so difficult right now, because I think that Baker Tilly did a very good job, at that time. So right now, the question that brought up was during that time last week was that they should process all the application that is correct and there's nothing wrong with it, so they can the others can wait. It seems that we're trying to correct this and then try to issue the check at the same time. I don't think that's really solving the problem right now. They should. That's what the question and then the recommendation was made. So there's not even, I think, I don't know what the response is from Mrs. Controller Begay. But that was my question, Henio. And then there's another, Henio, Audit is on the line, Delegate Vince James wants to ask a question too. Just let you know, to let. Sir Henio?
Delegate Almer PBK. With this question, I'll defer back to Madam Controller, Ms. Elizabeth Begay, and Mr. Shirley.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, Budget and Finance Committee, Delegate Crowdy's question about the planning on the ARPA hardship. As you recall, we did not get the Baker Tilly portal until October of 2021. We had a hard time getting the cooperation from our former consultant in releasing the portal. That's why it took us a while until October to get the access to the portal. And in the meantime, at the time, we were busy processing the Hardship 2 applications. And when we received the portal, we found out there's a lot of issues. We found duplicate census number, different recipients, but the same census number. So now we have to clean that up. We have to isolate them and work with the vital records to determine if they're the same person or vital records just made a mistake of assigning the same number to two different persons. So that's still being resolved. And then, of course, there's the issue on the addresses, meaning some recipients from Hardship 1 receive assistance, but they do not have complete contact information. So we have to resolve that as well. And given that, with this ARPA hardship, since we resolved the issue about the elderly, we were able to isolate the elderly, Hardship 1, Hardship 2. Then we will be able to assist them as a priority for ARPA hardship. And then for Hardship 2 recipients, since they just received their checks back in November and December, we do not have a lot of change of address. So that will be also able to issue the ARPA checks to them. It's just the Hardship 1 recipients that we are concerned about, that there's a lot of cleanup to do. And the FRF budget that we received, the 17 million, we did not get that until November 2021, and that's when we started planning what equipment we need to upgrade. And that's when we purchased the new printer for cashier to help us print the checks that we're projecting to do. And of course, the assistance for ARPA hardship was approved by the council just latter part of December 2021. with regards to the question by Delegate Bigay regarding the Baker-Tilly issue on the census, it's a problem. We found that out when we were able to access the portal. There's still a lot of problems on the CIB, and that's what Gerald is trying to resolve now, how to address that. But we're constantly meeting with the vital records, how to address these duplicate CIBs assigned to different people. Mr. Chair.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that response, Madam Controller Elizabeth Begay. So with that, I'm back to Budget and Finance Committee. Any further questions, comments?
Chair, still.
Delegate
I had a question for the issue with the one of the hardship. She calls, she submit her correction address. She communicate with one of the controllers there, but she never received a check. And I don't know who she talked to. I don't know how we can handle these type of problems, but the check was never issued. And now I told her, I said, now we're going into a ARPA funds, American Rescue Plan Act funds. It's going to go through now. She was talking with the problem with the CARE Act funds, and saying the CARE Act funds is about over, and only for those over 60. I wonder how can we take care of these problems? Should I bring her originals, her documents to your attention, Controller? These kind of problems. That's my my questions, Chairman. Yeah.
Thank you for that. Delegate Jimmy Yo here. Any further questions, comments from the Budget and Finance Committee? If not, I do believe we do have Delegate Vince James on the call also.
Oh, yeah, this is Delegate James.
I'll recognize you, allow you some time to ask questions regarding the topic that we're talking about now.
Chair, Honorable Jamie Hamio, and then Budget and Finance Committee. Nothing a big ahead. Oh, yet in Hidini Dole. Ado Nana, but not up on Shani, Kindachi, like a hunty, Exukahuye, Jedeto, what I Vanashako, Beshmas on the bunch Lako. Oko Kodo Dam, now this kidole, Ashin Belagonic, Etchidole. I get that the team session, so with that, excuse me for speaking English. I would like to ask my question in Navajo, but I think we'll have an understanding of it in English. So I do have several questions, and my first question in all of this information that we are getting, it's being brought up that there's a lot of incorrect issues that was done and with the previous funds that were allocated. So if there was a lot of issues and corrections that are taking place, why isn't there an audit called, or why don't we have an audit report on those incorrect issues? And I'm starting to think that, we're just full of excuses to calm everybody down, but that shouldn't be the case. And so I asked about the audit report of all of these incorrect information that's being brought up to us. Another thing that I would like to also ask, my second question, is in regards to phone calls. When is it that you guys are going to answer the phone calls, the phone numbers that have been disseminated to the Navajo people. No phone calls are answered, nor have the voicemail been cleared or deleted for voicemails to be left, for messages to be left. And so when is that going to be taken care of? Another one, number 3 is that we've talked about equipment, and we talked about borrowing equipment from other departments and then borrowing staff from other departments. Is there a reason why this is not taking place? I know there's a lot of equipment out there by departments that you guys can borrow in the meantime. On top of that, have you guys looked into individuals that have retired from the Navajo Nation, that have put in so many years and are well familiar with the J.D. Edwards, to assist and to see if you could hire them on temporary basis? Probably even some of them would volunteer. I don't mind myself volunteering myself if you guys just tell me where I can help and when I can come in to help. And I really don't mind doing that. And so I'm striving to you to say, hey, I'm here as a delegate. You can call on me and I can come and assist somewhere where you guys need help. And I can do it on voluntary base. Just so we get the fundings out to a lot of our Navajo families throughout the Navajo Nation, due to the fact that, you know, they're in need. They're in need of funds, and these funds were allocated last year, and we should have disseminated these funds to them last year. So that's my third question. And then my next question is in regards to some of these departments have contracts that are with vendors to rent, to take a temporary rental equipment like a big copy machine, and they can rent these equipments. Or have you guys looked into that? Is there a reason why you guys are not renting equipment? To me, it would be more beneficial to rent equipment for your office, and instead of investing in a big, large copy machinery, because you know they're going to wear and tear and down somewhere later on down the road. So it would just be more sense to just rent these heavy, large equipment to take care of printing a large amount of checks, because we're talking about over 400,000 individuals. So that's where I also had my other question is regarding the equipment. And so and then there's just so many issues that have been brought up, and it's just been indicated that there's holdups that are being done. Mr. Shirley's holding up, this and that staff is holding up. There's wording going around within your own inner department with information getting to us as delegates of where the holdup is happening. And so is this really a holdup that is happening there? And so those are my 7 questions that I have in regards to the time that I'm given here. And thank you, Chair, Honorable Jamie Henya, for giving me some time to answer these 7 questions. To provide these 7 questions. I'm sorry. Thank you, Budget and Finance Committee and audience. Thank you.
Thank you for being on this call and posing those questions to our Madam Controller and Mr. Shirley. You have the floor.
Okay, thank you for the questions, everybody. I'll go ahead and answer Mr. Honorable Yellowhair's question first. I believe, if that person could just basically send an email to us, because, the thing is, we have a lot of questions like that. It could possibly be that she had returned mail, a check might have been issued for her, and we have the check here, or basically because of return mail. We have a lot of instances like that where people would list a post office box and it's the correct post office box, but because her name is not on that box, the post office would send the checks back to us. So that's one thing she can do, is just follow up with that. And unfortunately, you would have to go through an email on that, because we have a number of inquiries similar to that. So the next one, answering Mr. James's questions. I'd like to know what the issues you're talking about. That was one of your first questions you asked. You said an audit should be done. If you could provide some clarification on that, that would definitely help us. And in regards to your phone calls, I like everybody to remember too that when Baker Tilly was handling this as part of the first CARES Act, they had between 100 to 400 at its max in terms of people answering phone calls. Right now, we don't have that luxury. And, it's unfortunate. We know we are missing phone calls, but I do have a phone log of how many phone calls are missed by individuals. And so, we have like one person who basically received roughly 5,000 phone calls, and she was only able to answer 248 out of that 5,000. Now realize too that when these people call, these phone calls last between 5 to 10 minutes. And that's something we are trying to address. That's just a resource challenge on our part there. But then like I said, put it into context. Baker Tilly, when they were handling this, they had between 100 to 400 people answering the phone calls. We don't have that luxury. In terms of equipment, we are getting that and situated in, I don't think the equipment issues that we have are basically related to printing jobs, and that's what we're trying to alleviate. A lot of the staff right now on the Hardship team have laptops, and basically I go up there just about every other day to find out what else do we need to do to provide so that things are easier for them. I wish it were a simple, and going to the next question, I wish it were a simple matter of just getting people who are familiar with JD Edwards and coming in here and changing things. I think, I even correct the Madam Controller in terms of her usage of the term data entry. It's not just a matter of data entry. It's also basically going in there and looking at the current information and changing information. And a lot of that stuff, the files that we sent out for payment processing for these elderly this past weekend, there was a huge file that we uploaded into JD Edwards, and then we basically processed that. And then cashiers would then proceed to print the checks. So it's not a matter of just going into JD Edwards and changing things. So, and I think I've alluded to that as well. There's some issues that we're still handling as well in regards to this whole process. And, that's one of the things I think you're going to hear from me too, is it's like the logistical issues, the nightmare that we're having to deal with. I think Nathaniel Brown he used the term logistical nightmare, and that's what we're dealing with right now. It's still a very fluid situation, and that's something we're trying to get a hold of. And this is, again, one of the reasons why I'm asking, give us the time to get the data organized and situated so then we can better assess what's going on as well. I think Honorable James mentioned 7 questions, but I was only able to get down 4. So if I miss anything, please remind me what those are. Thank you.
Kashina Kela for that response. Shenandoah Budget and Finance Committee, any further questions, comments? Again, there was a request for clarification. Shenandoah, Delegate Vince James.
Yeah, Donna, Chair Hino, and members of Budget and Finance Committee. Thank you for the response, Mr. Shirley. In regards to the other one, is if we're saying that there is a lot of incorrect errors with the previous funding that was provided and payouts that were done, why isn't that done on an audit report basis, or why isn't that being audited to receive an audit report? And that was my sixth question that you didn't answer. And last is, let me put it this way: we just need to stop hiding our pride and ask for help. And we need to stop being embarrassed to ask for help. And so that's my last question that you didn't answer, is why aren't you guys reaching out to ask for assistance? Just like me, I just offered my time and my volunteer. When can I come in to assist you guys? Where is it that I can help you guys as a volunteer base? It's either a yes or a no that you take my offer, and I believe some of my other colleagues wouldn't mind doing that. But again, I'm just trying to figure out how come you guys are not reaching out, why you guys are not going out there asking for help. Why are we embarrassed? What are we embarrassed about? We shouldn't be. We're trying to assist. We're trying to strive to you to say, we are here. We can help you. We can assist you. And so that's the last question that you didn't answer as well for me. Thank you, Chair Hina.
Gasheen, thank you for that clarification. I'll defer back to you, Madam Controller, Mr. Elizabeth Begay and Mr. Shirley.
Myself too, Delegate Chairman, just a Delegate Yellowhair to follow up.
And Ms. Begay?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, Budget and Finance Committee, and Delegate Vince James' question. I'll answer that. Mr. Shirley has to step out. The incorrect errors that we're uncovering, we're compiling all that. Those that may have been paid more than once. And of course, the issue about some recipients that they cashed a check twice. And we're all flagging that, we're all compiling it, and we will be submitting that in the event we get audited by our external auditors. And of course, I work closely with the Auditor General's office if they can help on doing an internal audit so that moving forward we'll not be encountering the same problems. For reaching out, asking for help, we did that in the Office of the President and Vice President will be sending some of their staff to help us. Of course, you're welcome to help us. We're not declining anybody that would like to help. And of course, for the retired Navajo Nation employees, we finally posted the JVA for office assistant and office specialist. Now it's open for application now, and those that are willing to apply or willing to volunteer, yeah, we're working with that. Mr. Shirley will be reaching out with them. We don't decline anybody. We need all the help we can get. And thank you for that question. And Delegate Yellowhair's question about that person that was not able to get assistance. Yeah, that person can mail us directly. We need the CIB and the name so we can do the research. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Madam Controller, Ms. Elizabeth Begay, and also Mr. Shirley for your prompt responses to the questions that are being posed right now. As you know, the Budget Finance Committee, it's 1:20 p.m. We still have 2 more reports to take care of. So are there any further questions or comments? If not, I'll call for the question to accept the report. This report is an ongoing report, and it'll be the next agenda, I'm sure, for an update report again. So with this, any further questions or comments, committee members? I did hear follow up.
Chairman. Okay, Chairman. Thank you, Acting Controller Elizabeth Begay. Thank you very much for responding. I will do my best to assist that person too. Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Daryl Shirley. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Shinada. With that, if there are no further questions or comments, committee members, I'll call for the question to accept the report. Mr. Moses, you lead us in a roll call vote to accept the report.
Yes, sir. Honorable Elmer Begay. Honorable Elmer Begay, Honorable Nathaniel Brown,
Oh, green. Don't give a gay.
Honorable
Ayes, because I've had
Elmer Begay, you vote green. Honorable Elmer Begay. Honorable Nathaniel Brown.
Oh, green. Give a gay.
Honorable
Delegate
Elmer
Brown
Begay
votes
votes
in favor.
green. Honorable Nathaniel Brown votes in favor. Honorable Amber Canesba Crowdy. Honorable Amber Canesba Crowdy. Honorable Raymond Smith Jr.
Green.
Honorable Raymond Smith Jr. votes green. Honorable Jimmy Yellowhair. Honorable Jimmy Yellowhair.
I'll vote green. Thank you.
Honorable Jimmy Yellowhair votes green. Honorable Amber Canesba Crowdy. Chair, a vote of 4 in favor, 0 opposed.
Okay, we do have a due pass to accept the report, 4 in favor, 0 opposed, chair not voting. And also to Madam Controller Elizabeth again, Mr. Gerald Shirley, thank you for being on this call and being professional and calm in your responses to some of the critical questions that were being asked. And so as staff, we do really appreciate what you're doing for the Navajo people and trying to get these payments out in a timely manner. And we understand the roadblocks that you are facing and basically reinventing the whole process again because of what happened with our consultants. So again, thank you. And really just have a really, really good day. Thank you for being with us to this afternoon. With that, we'll move forward to next report. Somebody having a party somewhere back there. You hear some laughing. Maybe it's the controller's office. But let's move forward to our next report, Mr. Dominic Bial, Office of Management and Budget. Are you on the call? Mr. Dominic Bial? First call, Mr. Dominic Bial, Office of Management and Budget. I heard Lisa Jim earlier. Second call, Mr. Dominic Bial,
You would need to
Office
go,
of Management and Budget.
Dominic Bial needs to use *6. He's muted.
Okay, *6. Mr. Dominic Bial, third and final call. We move forward to the next item on the report, item E. Mr. Tom Platero, are you on the call?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Kushina, provide a report to the Budget and Finance Committee as requested regarding the SRF office and the activities.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, I emailed you 3 documents. They are budget summary reports. The first one that I sent it to all 24 members of the Navajo Nation Council, is the ARPA and then FRF administrative regulatory support costs, and that lists K211500 OPVP Fiscal Recovery Fund Office to K211520 in DNR Fish and Wildlife Department. Those have all been set up. Budget is $119,054,218. Expended is $180,139. Encumbered is $746,260.05. Right now, the only ones that are expending any money are the FRF office, and the AML has some expenses, and Office of the Controller has some expenses. Everybody else hasn't spent money. The next one is the defunded CARES Act money, and that begins with K211516, DD Economic Relief, to K211526, Department of Health COVID-19 PPEs, personal protection equipment. That's $59,064,598. The only one that's expending any money is the DD Economic Relief, $1,078.67, with a balance of $59,063,519.33. Then the last one is the approved expenditure plan, which is K211522, the Hardship Assistant, $557 million, and nothing has been expended out of that amount. On the administrative support ones, we do have one more budget that we've been trying to get through, OMB, which is Department of Health. I got an email back from them that they want corrections on that budget. All of those will be taken care of. And then on the CARES defunded, we did submit a budget for N2A connecting homes to electricity, N2A wastewater collection and conveyance, N2A septic tank system installation, N2A water distribution and transmission, N2A drinking water storage, N2A cistern systems. These 6 budgets have gone in. We are still working. We need to coordinate with general services for the N2A broadband last mile, N2A broadband other projects. Those ones haven't been done yet. We also have CARES defunded drinking water treatments, drinking water transmission and distribution, drinking water source, Department of Health testing, Department of Health COVID-19 mobile units, Department of Health COVID-19 Deltec. Those budgets still have to be submitted and followed through. Thereafter, once we get those ones set up, then we'll transition into working with the Controller's Office to set up the accounts for those programs that have money the cost that could be transferred over from Citizen and UUFB. This worksheet was updated by the consultant that's helping with this project, and I believe the new numbers are $77,559,069, and this would include the DCD equipment for $7,148,169, DCD vehicle $727,815, DCD trailer $931,181, DCD tractor $184,000, Department of Water Resources drinking water $7,464,679, Department of Water Resources Western Navajo $58,225,000, Department of Water Resources drinking water source $876,225, CMA-14-21 burial assistance $2,002,000, and that is still pending review according to this from the report from DOJ. So that's $77,559,069. We haven't gotten to those ones yet. Our office is still trying to hire staff. As of this morning, we have 3 staff. We still have 14 more to hire. We are finding that some of the applicants that are being referred to our office don't necessarily have the experience necessary with the tribal system. So we've been trying to mainly recruit from within because if you bring somebody from the outside, particularly for management positions, it's going to take a while for them to learn the Navajo Nation system. We do have 2 support staff right now that are working on administrative services officer and an office specialist. We had the public information officer that started this morning. We have background checks that are being completed for a program supervisor 2, a deputy executive director, and a principal accountant. We do have referrals for some of the positions that are going to fall under the deputy executive director. However, I'm holding those ones until that individual comes on board so they can hire their own staff. Once we get all of those in place, We should have everything up and running. We are still evaluating how we will do the reporting and the monitoring. I did send all the delegates the information from REDW as an orientation on the ARPA process. I am working with them to see if we can get in on the next one that will include information on the final rule. I believe I emailed 3 documents to council as well. One of them is a summary, one is an abbreviated version, and one is the detailed version that includes all of the final rule. So we are trying to be a resource to everybody as far as the ARPA funding and the rules that go along with it. We are anticipating the release of a RFP. I got an email back this morning that it should be out today, and that will automate the hiring process as part of the concern about why it's taking so long to get individuals on board. Why are people not getting paid? So we are looking to automate that process. The other one that we're taking a look at is we're hopeful to release an RFP shortly that will do a salary comparability study to take a look at what we're paying our people and make sure that we are competitive when we get these positions advertised. It's been quite some time since that salary comparability study has been done. As you know, right now, inflation is really high, and so what we're paying for things is much more expensive than it was just a few months ago. Mr. Chair, that's all I have at this point. I stand for questions. Mr. Chair? Hello?
Vice Chair Smith, you may have to step up. I believe we may have dropped Chair Henio's call. Cecilia?
Question shut down. So, committee members need a motion.
Motion, Delegate Crotty.
Motion by Honorable Karate, second.
You are unmuted.
Second, yellow hair.
We have a motion by Honorable Karate, second by Honorable Harris. Any questions?
Vice Chair, this is Delegate Crotty with a question.
Yes, Honorable Karate, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate it, Vice Chair. Thank you, Mr. Papero, for your information and transparency. I think what my concern is in terms of this amount of money that was allocated for administrative costs. We had a conversation with Acting Controller Begay and the challenges that her office is facing regarding implementing some of the fiscal recovery funds. And in looking at this budgets that were allocated to the Navajo Nation executive departments, can you give me some insight in terms of, I want to use the word accountability, but I also want to make sure to understand completely, like, when this money was made available and what's the understanding of how these balances will be drawn down. If this is a 3-year, so 2024, and the funding has to be spent by 2026, can we get a little bit of an insight when we look at these budgets? Is this considered a yearly budget? I'm looking at it 118, so I'm assuming this is until 2024, 2026. If you could just give me an idea of when projects are on, like, when they're able to scale up and draw down this funding. I think that's why I'd like to receive more information from your office, because this budget is unlike any other. And so if you could help me understand that process, or how internally we can make sure the programs that have requested and were allocated funding then are properly planning and making sure those funds are drawing down. I'm in particularly looking at, just the amount of money that's $118 million. This is like a budget, right? This is like a budget year. So this is a lot of money, and I'm just trying to understand through the uniqueness is how do we keep this funding accountable, but also making sure then the programs are providing the services or moving the projects in using this money to make it happen. I could reframe the question, but I think what I just want to know is I would just assume at this time there would be more expenditures, or at least, at the very least, more encumbered funding, or these budgets can be considered. At what point are they just considered like inflated amounts? And that's what I'm trying to make sure that the funding that was provided will be used to make sure the nation responds to COVID. Thank you.
Back to committee members. Any other questions? Not hearing any presenters. Go ahead. You have the floor.
Mr. Vice Chair, members of the committee, one of the things that Budget and Finance should be aware of is I wasn't here at the beginning of the process of the allocations. I believe all I can speak of is how we got our allocation underneath the Division of General Services for the broadband office. All the programs were requested to submit a budget for their administrative support costs as it relates to ARPA. So directors were given the opportunity to submit their requests. Some were deemed eligible, some were not deemed eligible. And that was following the process that was created through the approval of Budget and Finance Committee for the process of getting a proposal submitted to DOJ and having them determine that it's eligible. Then those then turn around and according to CJY 4121, which Council approved, the administrative costs is covered underneath Section 7 of CJY 4121, where the Navajo Nation hereby allocates 10% of all fiscal recovery funds received by the Navajo Nation to fund central support and regulatory costs. Out of this amount, which is 10%, which is around $207 million, President has the authority to allocate up to 90%. Speaker has the authority to allocate up to 10% of that, which would probably be around $20.7 million for legislative. I have not yet seen any budgets that have been submitted by legislative for their portion of it. When I came into the process here, those numbers had already been determined and sent out, but I did let President know that as people were going through the process, some numbers changed. Then that's the part where I can speak of the FRF budget. I believe Madam Chair's concern is on the line item that went in for salary adjustment. When we went through the process of setting up the budgets, we had to keep the numbers as closely aligned as to what the approved amounts were by categories, because that was the numbers that were approved. For the FRF administrative office, they put in a lot of really high positions, and that budget, again, I did not prepare. I inherited that budget, and so we streamlined the process so that we could get the organization that I thought we needed as the interim executive director. I am in the process right now of moving those funds around and transferring them out to other operating items. But that process is very lengthy to complete, particularly when you're dealing with personnel costs. When I was working with general funds, we went through a process where we just moved the funds around. You know, you went by the basic rules of you can move money within personnel, but you can't move it from personnel to operating. These are federal dollars where you can move money from personnel into operating. The other part of it is that this office wasn't set up until November. And from there, we had to go and meet with OMB and personnel on how to set up the process. So once we got a consensus from both OMB and personnel, that's when we were starting to able to submit the budgets. So what happened was when the budgets were being prepared, they were prepared on the old pay scale that came from FY 2021. So OMB then required that the new budgets be updated with the COLA adjustment, or what we call it, the adjustment that was approved through the budget process for 2022. So all the budgets had to be redone. And in order for the budgets to go be budgeted for the full term of the contract, the full term of the funding, which is to 2026, we had to account for each year in that budget. So this budget isn't a yearly allocation. It covers the whole duration of when ARPA fundings can be expended. So that's why you see all of those big amounts in there. But what happened is once the budgets were set up, then a lot of the programs were like, well, reanalyzing what our needs are versus what we got approved. We are now having certain programs that are going back in and changing up the classifications. They're changing all of these things around, and so that takes time. We're trying to streamline the process for ARPA funding, but it's not happening because we still have to meet the requirements that are still there to move funds around. So that's what's going on with all of those ones. Then as we got into it, as Elizabeth said in her report, the original budget that she submitted versus her current need now are not the same. So once they started getting into the system, then additional costs were identified. One of the things that we had to work with Elizabeth on her budget was she needed audit dollars up front so that she could get those ones in place so that she could keep in compliance with the reporting requirements for the ARPA funding. We received another request from them, believe yesterday or on Friday, where she needs to now make another adjustment so that she can cover the cost of managing the investment dollars that go along with managing the ARPA funds and the investment side of it. So there are certain costs that are coming up that people weren't anticipating when they were doing their budgets. So right now we're trying to finish out the first phase of it, go back with President, let him know that these are additional requests that are coming in that are being identified. The other part of it is when you go back and forth between the three categories that are done, I hear council reporting and asking for stuff. Well, why wasn't this planned for? Because nobody really had worked with these. To be quite honest with you, I'm learning a lot with this process. I mean, I hadn't worked with contract funding since 10 years ago when I was at DOT. There's a whole different process when you're dealing with federal dollars. And so even the budget review process for transfers, it goes through additional reviews that you don't do with general funds. And so it's learning those systems. And you're bringing on new people that don't know that system, and so it's difficult to teach everybody all of that stuff. And the other part of it is those positions have been advertised, but we're not getting applicants to fill those positions. I'll give you an example. One of the things that I needed, that I created within the FRF budget, was I wanted to hire a program manager too, so that they could handle the personnel for all of these, make sure people have an onboarding process, make sure that people complete their background checks, make sure that people get their reviews done on time, and that people receive the training that we needed. So I needed somebody that had an extensive background in personnel. But when we got the referrals, all of the people that were on there had never worked with the tribe. And so when we asked them that you need to be 6B certified, in order to be in this position, because you're going to be a manager, none of the applicants had the 6B certification. So you can't have a program manager that doesn't have that, and how long are we going to sit and let them complete that 6B process? You got to remember 6B started, 2-3 years ago. And if you actually take a really good look at programs, a lot of the programs aren't spending money because they can't get their managers to be 6B certified. That was one of the things that I worked on at Division of General Services, is I made sure that all of our managers were 6B certified, and that was completed. I believe the last one got her certification in December of this year. So from February to January, we were making sure that all of our people were 6B certified and their support staff to be 6B certified. Remember, there's 4 roles that are inside the 6B process. You have your requisitioner, your approver, your receiver, and your 3-way match. So every organization, in order to take care of their procurement process, has to have at least 4 people within their office that can take on those roles. The rules have really become more strict when 6B came in, because a lot of the time, finance and they will return stuff and say, this needs to be processed through 6B. I'll give you an example. We ran the ads for the ARPA hardship funding. Those were run by Elizabeth's shop so that people would know what's going on with those. We tried processing an RDP for that, and we got it sent back because we had to enter it into the 6B system. So imagine all the programs that are out there that have millions and now billions of dollars that can't do those procurement things because they don't have the staff that are certified on, and that's what makes it difficult. So the system was created in a way that makes it more difficult to expend not only the general funds dollars, but also the additional funds that we're getting. So very few people, very few programs in the entire Navajo Nation have all 4 of those that are 6B certified. And so if you don't have that, that money is just going to sit there, because every request that you try to submit through the RDP process is going to get sent back and say, this is actually something that should be 6B. And these are all of the rules that Budget and Finance has control over that approves all of those processes. So it's very difficult when people aren't really adjusting to the approved system that's in place and then turning around and saying, I can't spend those funds. And, like I said, I haven't worked with contracts in a while. It takes everything much longer to get something through the contract process than it does through general funds. General funds is a lot more flexible than any of the contract money that you're going to work with, because there's additional reviews that are under the contract process that aren't under the general funds process. So everything is basically, you have this big old smorgasbord of transactions that needs to be done, but everything has to go through an accountant or 2 down at contract accounting, and everybody kind of sits there. So I'll give you an example. When you're hiring somebody under general funds, the approval and verification of funds is done by DPM. If you're going to hire somebody under contract funds, those are done by contract accounting. So you can't bring on anybody until you go through that additional layer of reviews to do funds availability when the HRIS system is already built and set up in that manner. So it's a lot of it is repetition when you start dealing with contracts. So all of the ARPA dollars, all of the CARES dollars have to go through that additional process. The other part of it is the more you delay it, the more everything is going to take for the process to get the funding available to them. When you talk on Delegate Crotty, when you're talking about drawdowns, you have to go back through all the beginning of the process first. You don't just automatically go to, you're going to expend these funds, you got to approve everything. Council approves the expenditure, President signs it into law, then the process begins. So when you're asking us, well, why isn't this time for it? Why isn't this done for it? We have nobody that can do that because we're all general funds and still trying to do the regular work that we're trying to do. So earlier, when somebody else was reporting to you guys, it's like everything at contract accounting or everything at finance was put aside so that they could process the ARPA CARES elderly hardship checks. What that's happening is now our bills aren't being paid, because they're taking all their available resources in there and trying to get the checks out, so everything else kind of gets laid to the side. So if you take the last 2 weeks, nobody's been getting their travel reimbursement claims. Nobody's been getting their checks made for the receiving reports that have been done. Nobody's issuing the purchase orders for the stuff that people need. So the system basically came to a complete halt so that these checks could be given out. So that's where the availability of resources really needs to be reviewed and considered when these funds are done. So the longer council delays this, the longer it's going to take to actually set those up so that we can get the money to the individuals that are going to be actually implementing those programs. Mr. Chair.
Back to committee members. Any other questions? I'm not hearing any other questions, so we'll call for the question. Ms. Mose, could you call for the question? Roll call vote.
Sir. Okay. Honorable Elmer Begay. Honorable Elmer Begay. Honorable Nathaniel Brown. Honorable Nathaniel Brown. Honorable Amber Knesba Crowdy. Honorable Amber Knesba Crowdy. Honorable Jamie Henue.
Any votes green?
Honorable Jamie Henue votes green. Honorable Jimmy Yellowhair.
Delegate Yellowhair votes green.
Honorable Jimmy Yellowhair votes green. Honorable Elmer Begay. Honorable Elmer Begay. Honorable Nathaniel Brown. Honorable Nathaniel Brown.
Delegate Brown votes in favor.
Honorable Nathaniel Brown votes in favor. Honorable Amber Knesba Crowdy. Honorable Amber Knesba Crowdy. Vice Chair will vote of 3 in favor, 0 opposed.
Thank you for the roll call vote. Report passes. I think we have Honorable Chair Henue on board. I'll turn the gavel back over to Chair Henue. You have the gavel.
Vice Chair Smith for taking over. I seem to lose signal as soon as I start driving by admin 1, and so anyway, thank you. Moving down, we have heard all the reports with the exception of 1. So moving down to the next item, old business, there's none. 1.7 new business, legislation 004-22. Vice Chair Smith, if you would, I'll hand the gavel back over to you, but once you receive the gavel, I'd like to have the floor.
Chair Henio, this is Peggy.
Yes, Peggy.
I'm just reminding you that you had a directive after the reports that you wanted to make.
Oh, yes, I forgot. Thank you for that reminder. There was a directive requested. Shinanda, Delegate Eberkin Aswakari, are you on the line with us? Delegate Amber Kinaswakari. We'll wait till she comes back on. So with this, let's move forward to Vice Chair Smith, if you would. I'll be handing the gavel back to you.
Agushi, thank you, Chair Henio. Committee members and Budget Finance Committee, next on the agenda is legislation 0004-22, sponsored by Honorable Chairman Henio. Shada, could we have that read into the record?
Vice Chair Smith, this is Delegate Henio, if I could.
Go ahead, Chair Henny. I'll go ahead and recognize you. You have the floor.
Vice Chair Smith. Since I'm the sponsor of this legislation, I have been working with Office of Legislative Counsel and Navajo Nation Department Division of Community Development regarding the memo that needs to be included from the Office of Management and Budget. And in that memo, there were a couple items that were raised. And with that, we need to hold back. So I'll motion to suspend the floor rules to defer legislation 0004-22 to the next Budget and Finance Committee meeting on February 15th, because there needs to be major amendments made to this legislation, and Legislative Council is still working on it, and they'll need more time to get that legislation drafted so it can be presented before the committee. So with that, I make that motion to defer this legislation to February 15th. Vice Chair Smith.
Chair Henyo. There is a motion to defer this to the next meeting, which would be February 15th of this year, 2022. In regards to what Chair Henyo had stated, there is some amendments and some work that needs to be done prior to this being heard by Budget and Finance Committee members. Do I have a second?
Yellow hair.
There's a second by Honorable Yellow Hair. Any questions, comments on this deferment? Not hearing any. Mr. Mose, could you do the round the horn?
Yes,
Roll
sir.
call.
Honorable Elmer Begay. Honorable Elmer Begay. Honorable Nathaniel Brown. Honorable Nathaniel
Delegate
Brown.
Brown votes in favor.
Honorable Nathaniel Brown votes in favor. Honorable Amber Canesba Crowdy.
This is Delegate Crowdy. I'll vote green. Thank you.
Honorable Canesba Crowdy votes green. Honorable Jamie Henyo.
Henyo votes green.
Honorable Jamie Henyo votes green. Honorable Jimmy Yellowhair. Honorable Jimmy Yellowhair. Honorable Elmer Begay.
Delegate Yellowhair votes green.
Honorable Jimmy Yellowhair votes green. Honorable Elmer Begay. Vice Chair, I vote of 4 in favor, 0 opposed.
Thank you for that, Mr. Mose. Motion passes. February 15th will be the next Budget and Finance Committee meeting to hear this legislation that's in front of us, 00004-22. Thank you, committee members. Back to Chair Henyo. I'll go ahead and turn the gavel back over to you. You have the gavel.
Vice Chair Smith. And that takes care of all of our new business items. We had one of this legislation on the new business. With that, we still need to do the directive. I did hear Shananta Delegate Amber Kinispa back on the line. So with that, Shananta, Delegate Kari, do you still wish to make that directive that you mentioned during the report?
Thank you, Chairman Henyo, and I apologize, committee members. I've just had some challenges with this call getting kicked off. But Chairman Henyo, yes, I'd like to make that directive. Thank you.
You see, with that, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chairman and committee members. So I'm in order. The directive was to, gosh, I'm going to need some help. Chairman Henyo, was the directive regarding the policy timeline, or if you could help me recall, Chairman, I apologize.
With this, Peggy, I believe she was taking notes, and Peggy, what was the directive? If you could recap that for us.
This was during the item number B, which is the report from the Auditor General, acting or delegated. It was mentioned that there was a.
Peggy,
I'm trying.
okay, I remember now. It's this is a directive to the Office of the Speaker to give timelines or their position as far as how they plan to fill the position of the Auditor General in a timely manner. And because of this position has been vacant for a long time so far, so hopefully does that help you recall the directive, Shananda? Delegate Amber Kinos-Bacardi.
Oh, yeah, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Ms. Nakai, for that. Yes, so the directive is to the Office of the Speaker as branch chief of the legislative to provide an update and a plan of action on either establishing an acting Auditor General or the pathway to hiring and appointing or confirming Navajo Nation Auditor General. Thank you, Chair, committee members.
Okay, thank you for that directive. With that, committee members, Budget and Finance Committee, is there a second?
Yell here. Delegate Yell here.
We do have a second, Shananda. They'll get Jimmy Yell here. So we do have a motion and a second on the directive to the Office of the Speaker, Legislative Branch. Floor is open for questions. Any questions, comments?
No question from Yell here. That was pretty good. Chair.
I'm hearing none. So with that, let's move forward to Vice Chair Smith. Vice Chair Smith.
Yes, thank you. Also, thank you, Shmaya, for the directive on this. My question to the directive is, do we have any candidates available? Are we prematurely pushing this issue to get a Auditor General on board? I know that they have to have certain criteria and degrees and experience level, and is there a said candidate out there that we could utilize for the time being? If that's, I think what I heard too was put in an acting. I know that if the person is going to be acting, then that would be pursuant to their degrees and also their experience on behalf of this particular job that is going to be that we're trying to fulfill. And also too, does this position have to be advertised, or how does the position work? Is this through the Speaker's office? I know that Speaker's office is the I guess the overall, for lack of terms, supervision. Shananda, just kind of needed a little bit of understanding of how we're approaching this, and I'm not against this. I'm just wanting to understand how we're making sure that we do get folks in there to these positions that we need, especially with the ARPA funds and the audits and things that are happening within the Navajo Nation as a foresay. Because if we don't do audits, then that's not a good sign on behalf of Navajo Nation business, because audit is merely to show that there is some discrepancies or there is some correction measures that need to be done and things of that nature. Thank you, Chair Henia.
Thank you for that inquiry, Vice Chair Smith. With this, maybe a modification is needed, but I'll defer back to Shananda, Delegate Amber Kinos-Bacardi.
Thank you, Chair Henyo. I appreciate the feedback. Vice Chair Smith, so the intent is for the Office of the Speaker to do something I'm trying to look for, I'm trying not to be too crass. What is the office, the directive is for the Office of the Speaker to, I guess, reevaluate the appointment of the Auditor General. I think that was the term, appointed, or I can't remember. And what is the timeline to hire, or what is the office doing to hire? Are they recruiting? Are they going to the schools? Are they, what is happening this, let's see, Ms. Begay left nearly 4 years ago. So what's the plan to search for a permanent employee? So I'm not advocating for any, or I wouldn't want the committee to advocate for any individual, but the directive would be an update report from the Office of Speaker on what actions are being taken to fill that position, and then if modifications need to be made. And if you recall, Vice Chair Smith, in the former controller, they had an opportunity to negotiate their salary. Maybe that's one of the perks. If there's a certain education and experience that's required, then they could, and I'm not sure because I don't know enough of how the position is put together, but there's also room to negotiate a price or negotiate a salary that's consistent with their education and experience. So let me summarize this. So the directive would be, what is the action being taken by the Office of the Speaker to fulfill the Auditor General's position? Maybe that's the best approach. Thank you, Chair.
Christina, thank you for that modification of your directed motion. But this, Delegate Jimmy Gallagher, are you in favor of the modification?
I'm in favor, so the chairman. We need the best we can to get this position to be filled.
Christina, with that, moving forward, any further questions, comments on the motion for a directive? Hearing none, Mr. Bose, if you would lead us in a roll call vote.
Yes, sir. Honorable Elmer Begay. Honorable Elmer Begay. Honorable Nathaniel Brown.
Delegate Brown votes in favor.
Honorable Nathaniel Brown votes in favor. Honorable Amber Canesba Crowdy.
This is Delegate Crowdy. I vote green. Thank you.
Honorable Amber Canesba Crowdy votes green. Honorable Raymond Smith Jr. Honorable Raymond Smith Jr.
Green.
Honorable Raymond Smith Jr. votes green. Honorable Jimmy Yellowhair.
I vote green.
Honorable Jimmy Yellowhair votes green. Honorable Elmer Begay. Chair, a vote of 4 in favor, 0 opposed.
Thank you for that roll call vote. 4 in favor, 0 opposed. Chair not voting, and directive hereby passes. So with that, moving forward on our agenda, we are at the close of session. Written announcements, I do not see any written announcements, so adjournment. Before we adjourn, thank you. Next meeting is on February 15th, 2022. With that, is there a motion to adjourn?
Yellowhair.
Delegate Jimmy
Delegate Brown,
motion by Delegate, second by Delegate Brown. So we do have a motion and a second. Any questions, comments before we roll call vote to adjourn?
Chair Henio.
Peggy?
Thank you. Just a friendly reminder to everyone that we do have the PTF update meetings on Friday at 9 o'clock. via Zoom.
Okay, that's at 9 o'clock in the morning. So
Oh,
with that, thank you for that reminder. If there's none, Mr. Mose, lead us in roll call vote to adjourn.
Yes, sir. Honorable Elmer Begay. Honorable Elmer Begay. Honorable Nathaniel Brown.
Delegate Brown votes in favor.
Honorable Nathaniel Brown votes in favor. Honorable Amber Knesba Crowdy.
Chair, this is Delegate Crotty. I vote green. Thank you.
Honorable Amber Knesba Crowdy votes green. Honorable Raymond Smith Jr.
Green.
Honorable Raymond Smith Jr. votes green. Honorable Jimmy Yellowhair. Honorable Jimmy Yellowhair.
I'll vote green.
Honorable Jimmy Yellowhair votes green. Honorable Elmer Begay. Carried a vote of 4 in favor, 0 opposed, adjourned at 2:12 p.m.
Thank you for that roll call vote. We are hereby adjourned to 12 p.m. And with that, I launch on the Budget and Finance Committee for a good meeting. And wherever you go, be safe.